Hey everyone, this is Chris. Today's episode is actually an episode I did from last year. It's a chat with Al Craig, the head of Living Rock Youth Ministries in Hamilton. The reason I am sharing it is this week it's all about gearing up for Soup Fest, which is a huge event that Living Rock puts on that does a lot of fundraising for the good work they do. Please check it out. I hope you enjoy. And if you can, check out the links below, especially if you want to learn more about Soup Fest and if it's something you feel you can donate to. Hope you enjoy, and God bless, my friends. Take care. Hey everyone, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio. And today I am joined by Alan Craig, the head of Living Rock Ministries. Al, Living Rock. Al, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Doing all right, man. Just coming in before work to do this thing. Thank you for taking the time. So, could you share a bit with us about your testimony?
Sure. I had been a kid on the streets when I was in my teens and had been brought up in a pretty dysfunctional family and had traveled around, got into the whole drug scene, did all kinds of, played in rock bands, did all kinds of crazy things, and I got heavily into drugs, got kind of messed up actually into drugs, and then became a Christian back in just before I turned 22.
Okay.
But I had traveled around a lot and had been on my own since I'd been about 17. So,
wow.
And I had gotten, like I said, I had gotten pretty heavy into drugs. So, became a Christian, and my stepbrother, who had been a biker and had been somebody I had admired, I connected up with him after being away for a while and found out he had become a Christian too. So that intrigued me. So we got talking and connected, and I just felt like one day what he had is what I needed, and came to Christ, and then my life changed and went to back to school about 2-3 years after that, and decided I wanted to go into ministry. So I went into ministry at a place called Teen Challenge, which works with youth, and did that for 4.5 years, and then started the Rock.
Nice. And I love that, as I'm hearing that bit with a brother-in-law, it's time and time again. Stepbrother. Time and time again, it seems like the community aspect where in faith and in this kind of setting, it's just how instrumental having that extra person is to...
Yeah, relationships huge, right? Like, I remember being at, I was a supervisor at a Billy Graham crusade, right? And
Goodness.
He was meeting with everybody and all the ministers, right? And there was probably about 300 or 400 people there, and he asked people who, how they became Christians. He asked, first of all, anybody become a Christian through, TV evangelists, for example. Nobody stood up. And then he said, how about through, music, like gospel music? Nobody stood up. And he said, maybe through your church. And then a few people then stood up. But then he said, how many were brought to Christ by having a relationship with somebody, and the rest of the people stood up. So that's important, right?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that tidbit too. I got to pick your brain about Billy Graham sometime. Just 'cause. When did you come up with the idea for Living Rock, and how long did it gestate before it became a reality?
Right. It actually happened pretty quick. I used to go down to this rock festival down in Chicago, Illinois, and it was very alternative for back then, being in the early '80s, and it was really like edge, right? A lot of punk bands and hardcore bands, but it was all Christian, right? And I remember driving back there with Karen, actually, at the time we were dating.
Okay.
And I started talking about starting something like what they were doing, because in Jesus People USA in Chicago have all of these. They don't just put on festivals; they have homeless shelters and all kinds of things. Right?
Awesome.
And they work with fringe people on the street, right? So I really felt like to have something that was grassroots. I'd already been working for Teen Challenge, but Teen Challenge was very much like a disciplined drug rehab center, where I really wanted to connect with people on a kind of on the grassroots level.
Yeah.
Right? So starting the Rock just on a very small scale. It was very different then when I started 32 years ago than it is now. It was mostly musicians, and we put on concerts.
Awesome.
And just reached out on the streets and stuff. We didn't own buildings or anything. We rented facilities and put on free concerts and things like that. And that was how we started.
That's great. Thank you. And I've got the book, so I'm
cool.
I'm gonna be. I haven't had the chance to read it yet, so I'm looking forward to that bit. So
nice.
Thank you. What are some of the ways that Living Rock is involved in the community in Hamilton?
Right. Well, our focus, as you know, is to reach out to street-involved youth.
Yeah.
And youth that are on the fringe, youth that are at risk, and we do that through a number of ways, from food bank to hot meals, serving 900 meals a week, to employment programs, to our open access programs. So all kinds of different ways. But our focus is to reach out to youth that are at risk, and what I've realized more recently, I mean, that changed over the years. We used to talk about reaching out to street kids originally, and then it was street, youth, and then street involved youth, and then now it's called the seems like the most recent politically correct term is at risk youth. But now that I've been doing this for a lot of years, I realize that I think pretty much every youth is at risk.
That's something I agree with you.
I have I have a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old, and so I've gone through the parenting of the teen years, but I mean, even in the 20s, it's still there. There's still issues, right? So, so they're at risk. It doesn't matter so much where you've been brought up in the city, or
It's not low income. I lived up in Waterdown, and Waterdown is well off.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of drug issues and a lot of stuff up there that they're getting better at, but it's like this isn't what you call an at-risk youth area.
Right.
So I 100% agree with you. It's not. There's a big event coming up called Soup Fest.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Soup Fest is there's 25 restaurants that are competing for best soup. So we've got, and so people come in to try the soup. So I've just finished booking all the bands. I had a list in front of me here somewhere, I think, of the bands that are playing. But we have a number of bands. Like Ridden Riders, which is a reggae band playing. I've got John Wozniak, who is in a band which is very well known called Marcia Playground.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's coming, and he pretty much was Marcia Playground. So it was a 3-piece band, but he wrote and sang all the stuff and did the guitar. He was
essentially
coming.
Prince.
Yeah. So we've got him, and he'll probably bring some musicians to back him up.
Awesome.
And then there's there's bands all day long, starting doors open at 11:30, and we go throughout the whole day. So there's restaurants competing, amazing soups, and entertainment going all day. So it's just a big party, really. It's an awesome time.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to it. And then if people want to, if they're listening and they're in Hamilton, how could they get involved or become get a part of that?
Well, I mean, they could go on our website and just check out. If you go on our website at livingrock.ca, you can scroll down and click on the Soup Fest link, and you can kind of get a picture of what Soup Fest is.
Awesome.
If you want to volunteer, you can come down and find out how to do that. You can volunteer either here at the Rock or come and volunteer just the day of Soup Fest. So there's that option too.
Perfect.
Or just come in. I believe the tickets are $20 at the door, and I think they're $15 in advance. I believe so.
And that's at the convention center, right?
It is, right
Perfect.
downtown. Yeah.
Perfect. I mentioned earlier you've written a book, which is just it's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah, cool.
How did that happen? What was that process like?
That book came about just from. I did it over a number of years, just writing different experiences of what I went through in starting the Rock, but it was also I was involved in a study done by Social Planning and Research on street involved youth. So I also included a lot of the findings about street involved youth in there. So it's not just a book about me or my experiences, though I did put some of that in there because my story is intertwined with the whole Living Rock story in and of itself. So it's not just about that, but it's about street involved youth, why youth become street involved, There's even scriptural, principles on how to reach out to the orphan, the widow, the alien, and the stranger, right? Which I find that youth that are on the street tends to be, most youth that I've encountered on the streets have had either no father in their home or there's been some kind of an abusive situation that happened, right?
Yeah.
So that's that book came out mainly from experience and then just wanting to put some of that. So I started printing. I had a box full of, I don't know if you remember, the floppy disk, but back I started it back in the the 80s. So I had these floppy disks, and then then I kept saving them. So I had this tray of discs, which was my book. And then
they had like maximum 8 MB space or something.
Yeah. So then I started saving them onto this computer, and then I put them to print. And got a publisher to come on board, and Essence Publishing, and they printed it, and the rest is
fantastic. Thank you. So we kind of addressed it anyway, but more so with Soup Fest. But if anyone listening could support Living Rock, what ways could they do that?
They could support us financially. That's definitely one way.
And can they do that through the website?
They can do it through the website. We can do it through online. They can do it through credit card. They can send in donations. They can do the pre-authorized.
Perfect.
Where it comes directly deposited or withdrawn out of their bank. So they can do it that way. Yeah. So and then they can come and volunteer. By they can get board and go through an orientation and volunteer here. They could keep us in their prayers because we're up against all kinds of opposition sometimes in what we're doing. They could, if they're part of a church community, they could have us connect with their church to come in and do a presentation.
Perfect.
And, so there's lots of ways.
Awesome. What do you feel is a difficulty faced by like social agencies, outreach, or social ministries today?
Difficulties, do you say?
Difficulties or challenges, or
I think that there's a lot of competition. There's charities starting every day. I've read in through the government emails they send out or newsletters. So there's a lot of charities, so it's hard to, you got to compete for funding, and you don't want to be in competition with like-minded organizations, but then there's reality that you are, so you're competing with that. You can get bogged down in the administration to the point where you're not doing what you're called to do,
right?
So there's, it's always, you're always competing for donors, when you're the new kid on the block, when you're new, sometimes people will think, oh, this is great, getting bored, but then you've been around for a while, it's kind of like, okay, I don't, whether or not that's something I want to stay invested into.
Right.
So, the whole funding thing is a challenge.
All right. And then finally, what advice would you give to those who might want to get into this line of work, be as a student or someone who has dreams of their own agency like Living Rock?
Right. I surrounded myself with people that had skills that I didn't have. And that's, to me, I got that. I remember when I was trying to start this organization, and I was getting overwhelmed by, I don't know how to do the books, I don't know how to do all the things that you need to do. Can't afford to hire people, right? But I was watching a talk show, I think it was Larry King or something. I was just channel surfing one night, and Larry King was interviewing this guy that was a self-made, billionaire, and he asked him how he did it. And he did it with the stock market, right? So he asked him, you must be very successful or know figures and be really good at math. And he goes, no, I'm dyslexic. I'm not good at figuring any of that stuff out. He says, well, how did you do it? He goes, I surrounded myself with people that had those talents that I don't have. And that's what I realized I needed to do. I originally was volunteer, so I found people that knew how to put proposals in.
Nice.
Karen had skills that I didn't have. I have skills that she doesn't have. So it's working together with people, because you could never start anything like this alone. And I believe in the power of prayer, and we started this with. In prayer, and we got people together and we prayed weekly for this ministry, and God was really faithful, and it opened up to what it is, and funds came in, and we've been able to do what we've done for the last 32 years. So,
and many, many more.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
you're
sharing that,
welcome,
Al,
Chris.
and your time. And dear listener, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you're interested at all in learning more about Living Rock and supporting financially or showing up to Soup Fest, I'll make sure I include the links in the blurb below. Thank you for listening, and God bless, my friends. Take care.